Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report. This is the space where we bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
Hey there, I'm Brooke. I'm Demi.
Happy holidays. I'm Nielle.
All right, coming up for you on today's report, political strategist Jasmyne Cannick is here to discuss an investigation into the Torrance, California Police Department. That is an important story you're going to want to stick around for. Also, we're having, another important discussion with Jennifer Farmer on what it's like being a first when you're a Black woman.
Also, a judge faces judicial conduct charges for comments disparaging a Black man. A city honors a nightclub where Ray Charles sang during Jim Crow. And Alicia Keys is coming to Fox Soul. We'll give you the details.
Soulmates, we have that and so much more. You know why? Because it's our voice, it's our truth. So let's get to it.
Soulmates, good evening. Thank you for joining us. California's Attorney General has launched an independent review to investigate several police officers in Los Angeles County for exchanging controversial and racist text messages. The officers are with the Torrance Police Department, and according to an LA Times report, Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon uncovered texts that discuss lynching Black people, gassing Jewish people, and assaulting members of the LGBTQ+ community. This happening over the course of several years. By the way, his office is also investigating. Attorney General Rob Bonta says two divisions in the state's Department of Justice, the Civil Rights Enforcement Division, and the Division of Law Enforcement will examine evidence and talk to community members, as well as police officers, and he says anyone involved to issue a determination on the case and recommend any further action as part of this probe. Before we move on, I do want to just break down some of the numbers here because I didn't get into it in the story, but this group of officers, according to the LA Times report that really broke this all open, at least 7 serious use of force incidents these officers, they say, have been involved in Torrance and Long Beach, including 3 that ended in the deaths of Black and Latino men. That's not all. They have dismissed 85 criminal cases based on uncovering these text messages. County prosecutors have tossed 35 felony cases, and that's just as of mid-November, right? We're into December already. Also, the Torrance City Attorney's Office has dismissed an additional 50 cases. And last point here, in total, I just want to go over the past decade, right? These officers, this group of officers, were listed as potential witnesses in nearly 1,400 cases.
All right, Soulmates, joining us now to discuss the Torrance Police Department and what accountability looks like is journalist and political strategist Jasmyne Cannick. Welcome to the Black Report, Jasmine.
Hi, Nielle. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Now, I'm from South LA, born and raised. You were born and raised in Compton. We are no strangers to the Torrance Police Department. But can you share with our Soulmates about the history of this police department and why, the Black community is really not surprised?
So Torrance was a sundown town, and that meant that when the sun went down, if you were Black or brown, you got out of town. And to some extent, it's still that way in parts of Southern California. So that's why I would say anyone 35 and older who was raised in Southern California, this isn't very surprising to them. A lot of the smaller police departments don't get the scrutiny that the larger police departments like the LAPD and the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department get, but they are just as bad.
And Jasmine, I'm glad you said that when the sun goes down first, because when I first came out here to visit years ago, I had friends that live in Torrance, and I was told that right away. So it is so true. Now, we also know you have extensive information of the text messages. Can you talk to us about some of those text messages?
Yeah, the text messages were absolutely horrible. I just want to first say that this all started last year when 2 Torrance police officers allegedly painted swastikas on a car that they were told to tow. And that's sort of what opened the investigation. And that's what led to the DA finding out about all of the other text messages. But some of them were shopping at 7-Eleven while Black. He didn't know the rules. So we totally racially profiled his blank. Hanging with the homies was underneath a picture that showed several Black men who had been lynched. Another photo asked what someone should do if their girlfriend was having an affair with a black man, and the answer was to break a taillight on his car so the police will stop him and shoot him. And to me, this one was really horrible. They're all horrible, but this one, someone else had sent a picture of a candy cane, a Christmas tree ornament, a star for the top of the tree, and an enslaved person. And the caption said, "Which one doesn't belong?" And one of the officers wrote, "You don't hang a star."
All right, so your Twitter feed was on fire with all, I just couldn't believe it. But you mentioned the culture of the police departments need to change. What does that mean? And do you think it's possible with the current climate of police officers?
Right. So some people aren't going to like my answer, but Neil, you and I have known each other for years, and I'm going to keep it real, right? So as long as we keep telling our sons and daughters not to go into law enforcement, the culture is never going to change, right? If there are only certain types of folks going into law enforcement who have that power over us, don't expect changes anytime soon. And secondly, if you don't have any meaningful consequences, and what I mean by meaningful is you lose your job, you lose your pension, you can be criminally charged or civilly held liable. Until those things become standard, routine, I don't think many officers are going to take it seriously, because now what happens is, yeah, you may have an officer who gets disciplined, he gets disgruntled and upset, and then sues the city for reverse discrimination. And then us, the taxpayers, end up paying that racist cop, $100,000 because he got disciplined for sending a racist text. That's how whack the system is right now. So changing the culture means that we have to get our sons and daughters, Black people, into the department, and we also have to weed out and root out, the bad ones by making sure that there are serious consequences for this type of behavior.
Jasmine, you're so right. We have to get in the game to change the game. Do you think the name of the officer should be released to the public? I know how I feel about that.
Absolutely. Look, hold on. They didn't do this on their off time. And anytime you are paid with taxpayer dollars, they did this on the taxpayer's dime. They weren't sitting at home in their own car, in their own clothes, using their own cell phones. They were using all items that are paid for by tax dollars. So by no means should they be afforded the luxury of anonymity in this situation.
All right, so Jasmine, I want to talk to you about, the whole concept of defunding the police. You and I both know that before that was even a controversial slogan, that we worked on a campaign to just do that, defund the police with reform LA jails. Can you talk to us about if you think that terminology needs to disappear and we need to stick to concepts like reimagine, or if, we should stick to defund and continue to push the agenda that it represents?
So I think, again, as the political strategist, Jasmine says, look, you have to own your campaign, own your message. You can't let other people come in and hijack it. And what I saw with the Defund the Police movement was that the other side came in and hijacked it, right? And said, yeah, they just want to get rid of all the police everywhere. And that wasn't necessarily the message that defund the police meant. For a lot of cities, it just meant not giving the police 80% of the city's budget, right? It meant saying, let's put more money into diversion or into other programs, but not necessarily get rid of the police. But I don't think a good enough job was doing in terms of countering what the opposition was saying. And then secondly, I would say, look, the campaign you and I worked on was to change the jail system, right? Was to have accountability in the jail system. When you look at criminal justice reform, it's not just about defunding the police. There are many, many areas where we need reform, from the courts all the way to the jails, from the sheriff's department to the police department. So defund the police, is one small part of the puzzle, but the whole criminal justice pie, there's a lot more to it than just the police.
Definitely. Now, we know on the federal level, the Justice for George Floyd bill has stalled in Congress. Do you think the change that many are calling is more effective on a local level or federal?
Look, Former U.S. House Speaker Tip O'Neill coined the phrase, all politics are local. And look, there would be no federal legislation if things weren't happening locally in our neighborhoods, our cities, and our counties. That's where things happen first. That's where we're affected the most. And so change is change, whether it happens locally or on the national level. What I do know is that in this country, we've only ever gotten any meaningful change through a court ruling or a piece of legislation. And that's how it's been.
All politics are local. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jasmine, and we look forward to having you back.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care.
What a wonderful interview, Niel and Romeo. Now on to our next story here. The Washington Commission on Judicial Conduct, they announced that it filed a statement of charges against former Clark County District Court Judge Darvin Zimmerman. The commission found probable cause that Zimmerman allegedly violated the Code of Judicial Conduct when he was caught on a courtroom camera back in March disparaging a black man who was fatally shot by Clark County Sheriff's deputies last year, as well as his father, the Columbian has reported. Now, the commission says Zimmerman violated the code by making comments about a controversial incident and the related impending case that displayed racial bias. It indicated a lack of impartiality and implied that he had a personal channel of communication with the sheriff's department regarding pending and impending cases. Just a quick recap on that comment that was made. He said the black guy they are trying to make an angel out of. And of course, to some people, it just seems like, oh, okay, that was nothing. But this is a judge here that has the opportunity to make life and death decisions for this case, but also for many black people. So you hold black people's lives in your hands. And so I feel like this judge, just in my own personal opinion, would never say that comment. This is Kevin Peterson, I believe his name was. Excuse me if I got the last name wrong. Peterson. Kevin Peterson Jr., the black guy that they're trying to make an angel out of. You would never say that out loud in a microphone, knowing that people could hear it. He only said this because he thought that the cameras were off. He only said this because he thought the microphone was off, and he thought that there was no one that could hear him. So this was just, even since it's been disgusting ever since we first reported on this story. Yeah,
and he felt like he was in a safe space, so to speak, right? That's why he said it. He also went on and said, he suggested that the next day Peterson's father woke up with dollar signs in his eyes. So imagine that. This man says he wanted to take some time off initially when all these things came out. He makes over $190,000 a year, right? But you have a job to do, right? And you think about the money that you're making. And at the end of the day, like whether you're a bus driver, whether you're an athlete, you know your do's and your don'ts. And you can't be within this system if this is your outlook and this is how you feel about certain cases.
Right, and you know his son is a police officer. He's a sheriff. He works on the drug task force. So this just goes to show how, sometimes within the criminal justice system, the district attorney's office, the judges, the police officers, they kind of work together. They all do. And I'll say this, like I said about the judge in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. With this type of comment, there needs to be a review of all of the cases that he sat on when it comes to people of color, because they've already acknowledged that he has a racial bias. So if he had a racial bias in this case, how many more black and brown people have been victimized by this judge? It just shouldn't stop here. And this is how we reimagine our criminal justice system, by not just addressing it today, but looking back in the past and giving the equity to people who have been disenfranchised within the United States criminal justice system.
Yeah. With a fatal shooting of a black man in a trailer park is rocking a rural community in Missouri as neighbors who say they witnessed the killing dispute the police narrative of events. Justin King, a 28-year-old black man and Filipino mix, he combined black and Filipino man, was shot November 3rd at 11:45 a.m. in the small town of Bourbon, located about 73 miles southwest of St. Louis. Police say he was shot by the owner of a home he was trying to break into, but witnesses and family members say he was shot in cold blood by a man he called his friend. King succumbed to his wounds at the scene. The 42-year-old white neighbor who shot him was taken into custody and later released. So you have witnesses out there saying something totally different. Now here's a man that expressed a desire to kill someone, had a history of violence, and was known to use racial slurs. So all that adds up to a problem. But the fact that he was arrested and then released based on his story compared to the witness's story, another insult to the family as well.
Another insult to the family as well is that there was footage of this, and the police have yet to release that footage to the family. So that's one insult, Romeo, as well. And then the second one is not letting the family know what happened. And so we talk a lot about on the show about the police body camera footage. Even that is important. That is important. I forgot what case it was that we were talking about where they released the body camera footage like next day, and we were all like, "Wow, okay, so it is possible for you to get the body camera footage out there and and put out, let the world know exactly what happened." And so the fact that this happens, a while ago, and the family still hasn't gotten a chance to see what happened to their family member is also the very shocking and disturbing part of this story as well.
Yeah. And when we look at like the Ahmaud Arbery case, like how long did it take for even someone to be arrested? And so, it is interesting to see what we see if that body camera footage is ever released. And, this is just another example of how when black people are killed, that there's always an innocent until proven guilty opportunity for a white person. But when it's on the flip side, we're arrested, we're booked and everything else. And then we have to prove, that we're innocent. And this is just the differences when we look at our criminal justice system. And that's why organizations are asking for fairness, equity, and to reimagine this system that was set up intentionally to disenfranchise people of color.
This has also started a conversation nationwide, right, about gun culture in America. One, not only how it affects Black Americans, but also how it compares to other gun owners, I put the two words together, other gun owners across the entire world. And I have these numbers. These are the latest numbers as of like 2019, right? These are the latest I could find, that Americans own nearly half, 46%, according to CNN, of the estimated 857 million civilian-owned guns in the entire world. Wow. Nearly half are owned by people in America. And also, we're seeing over and over, not only are we seeing school shootings over and over, and we know how that affects families, how that affects children, how our children go to school and prepare for that outcome. I was talking to one of my producers on Good Day LA today about the fact that, we had an update to the story of what happened in Michigan and how it felt like a long time ago. And when you think about what happened there, that should be something that shakes the world. But instead, people move on because it happens so often. And that's a horrifying truth, right? Because those are children, those are humans. Also, how many times recently have we had stories where people take a weapon somewhere with them to settle a dispute, to have a confrontation, to prepare for a confrontation, to settle something that begins and could have very well ended in a non-violent discussion, or could have just not happened at all? That does take you back to what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, because even with the 3 now convicted murderers and what they said in that case, they said that they were protecting a vacant home. They wanted to arrest someone that they thought was breaking into a home that didn't have anything in it to steal. What would be the reason to take a gun outside of, do you see what I'm saying? Like, what would be the reason to take a gun in an incident with a neighbor? What would be the reason to take a gun?
Absolutely.
And there's so many different instances. You can also go to Kyle Rittenhouse. He went to a protest and he took a gun. He felt like he needed that with him. And, again, I'm pointing to gun culture in America because you think in all of those instances, the simple answer would just be, if I feel like I need to take a gun, I'm just not going to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how you want to think. And I want to say this real quick.
Absolutely.
Justin King, when he showed up to the man's house, he had on pajama pants, no shirt. He was not even a threat.
Right.
And he thought this man was his friend. So there's definitely a different story behind this.
Yeah, and I also think too, like Brooke, you brought up the point of Ahmaud Arbery. If Ahmaud would have been white, would they have killed him? I don't think so. And I think that's the bigger issue in this country, is that how they see people of color and how the disregard of life that they will have on us versus they would have on their white counterpart in the conversation at all. I think it's all relative, but it's just this issue of how they see us. But we're going to continue this conversation. We right here on the Black Report.